So quiet. Do we need to have a countdown?
Well, I dropped my pen to see if anybody could hear it.
Good evening. Thank you for your patience. We were just waiting for the live stream. So good evening, everyone. Welcome to the finance meeting on February 6, 2023. I want to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Coast Salish people, including our near neighbors, the Lishiana First Nation and the Sauk First Nation. Councillor Shukin is on a conference call with us tonight. He is in Alberta. So starting with the agenda committee, are there any additions to the agenda? Marianne?
So we've got a number of pink items, mostly related to the staff report. The CRD Arts Commission probably should label them as B, C, D, E, and F, starting with April Hudson and ending with Ian Rye. Those should be added to the agenda in terms of correspondence. 8.
Thank you. Any other changes or additions or amendments? Okay. May I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
So moved.
Mayor Little, seconder. Councillor F. Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And presentations. So this evening we have Chris Gilpin, Manager of CRD Arts and Cultural Division, and Marianne Alto, Chair of the CRD Arts Commission, giving us a PowerPoint presentation.
Please start.
Welcome.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you.
You've been given instructions on how to manage the equipment?
I believe so.
Okay.
Thank you very much for welcoming us here to Metchosin. It's always such a pleasure to visit you, and thank you for being so welcoming to all of us urban types. Let me say how much I appreciate that as we densify, you don't. So please continue that trend. Today I'm here not as the Mayor of Victoria, but as the Chair of the Arts Commission, and all we really wanted to do tonight was bring you up to date on some of the information about the Arts Commission. We understand it's a matter you're considering later tonight, and Chris is going to give you some facts and figures, and then I'm just going to make a few closing comments, and we're happy to answer any questions that you have. So I'll turn it over to Chris, and I'll come back in a minute.
Thank you, and thank you, Chair, for having us. We really value the opportunity just to provide a little bit more information about the Arts and Culture Support Service. We have a little presentation for you. I'm going to quickly run through these slides, and then we should have the opportunity for some questions if there are any. And I apologize already for the fonts in the slide. They're not displaying very well, so we'll try to figure out these as we go along. Here we have a map of all the participating areas of the Arts and Culture Support Service. It is a sub-regional service. So 9 out of the 16 jurisdictions in the CRD participate. As you can see, Sault participates, Metchosin participates, Highlands, View Royal, Saanich, Oak Bay, Victoria, Esquimalt, and the Southern Gulf Islands. The Mayor of Langford, Mayor Goodmanson, has indicated that he would like Langford to join the Arts and Culture Support Service. So it started in 2001, and just to highlight here that Metchosin was a founding member. So Metchosin has been in the service since 2001. There has been an increase in the budget throughout the years, but always at a very reasonable level, never more than 2 to 4%. So the structure of how this works, how does this service delivered? There is an Arts Commission that is elected officials, 1 from each of the participating jurisdictions. So there are 9 members on the Arts Commission who are elected officials. There is an Arts Advisory Council. Those are volunteer members from the community who do the adjudication of all of the arts grants, and they provide recommendations about which applications should be funded, and they give those recommendations to the Arts Commission. And then their staff, there's 2.8 of us, and I'm one of them. Okay, sorry about the fonts here, but there are 5 grant programs. There's operating grants that provide stable funding for long-term planning, project grants, one-time projects, series, or extended programming, equity grants to support programs by communities facing barriers, incubator grants, that's really to get new organizations up and running, and idea grants, which we've had a lot of interest in, which is to fund arts activities that are put on by non-arts organizations. So we've funded things like Brain Injury Society, all kinds of different nonprofits who want to do arts projects. So this is just, again, sorry for the overlap on the fonts here, but to give you an idea, there's just an incredible variety of projects that are funded every single year. In 2021, there were 83 organizations funded, $2.5 million of grants distributed. In 2022, we actually had 95 grants distributed, so it went up from 83 to 95 last year. And the amount was $2.6 million last year. It employs a lot of arts workers. Over 3,600 arts workers all throughout the CRD, many paid artists and full-time staff. Over 4,000 events were actually supported, and over 1.7 million participants if you add up all of those events. Let's focus in on Metchosin specifically. So since, as I said, Metchosin was a founding member, over these 20 years, there have been 31 grants to Metchosin arts organizations. There's a few photos here just as examples. So we have MACA, that's the Metchosin Arts and Culture Center. That has a legacy of project photo up there, which was an incredible intergenerational arts project between students and seniors. And then in the other corner there, we have William Head on Stage, one of their many productions that has been funded through this service. Just to look at last year, there were 2 grants to Metchosin organizations, a total of $16,000 and some odd dollars went out, and the Metchosin contribution into the service was just under $15,000. So just to highlight the key benefits, what this means when you're participating in this service is that nonprofit organizations located in Metchosin can apply for grants to do arts activities. Metchosin residents benefit from arts activities across the region, of course, and contributions amplify the entire sector across the region. Another thing, though, that I think is really important, and I hope I can make this point because it's a little bit more complicated, but I see it all the time, is that we get project grant applications from organizations not in Metchosin who want to do regional tours, and they want to bring activities across the region. They'll do a show in Saanich, a show in Souk, and a show in Metchosin. I've seen many others. And for instance, when I get those project grants right now and it says Colwood or Langford, I have to say we can't support that because those aren't participating jurisdictions. So this is also how Metchosin benefits, is when other organizations outside of Metchosin bring arts events across the region. This is just a quick look at the dollars and cents. So if you look at Metchosin's the second last line there, there are 2 groups in this service. Basically, Group 1 pays the full rate. It's based, the cost sharing formula is 50% population, 50% assessment. And those top group decided they wanted to pay the full rate, so they paid the full rate. And then what happened is in 2018, we created a discounted rate, so only 30% of the full rate is paid by the Group 2 participants, but Group 2 participants still receive all of the same benefits as Group 1 participants. But it's at a much lower rate. So you can see Metchosin, that's the 2023 estimates, just over $15,000. It ends up being about 0.5% of the budget. And thank you. I'm going to turn it back to our chair for some concluding remarks.
Great. Thank you so much, Chris. And thank you again for allowing us to come and speak with you today. We're happy to take questions. I just want to speak to one brief thing, and that's the legacy of Metchosin in arts and culture. I had the privilege many years ago attending Pearson College. And even at that point, Metchosin was always front and center in creating opportunities for local artists to be able to produce their wares and to be able to showcase them and really take that leadership role in arts and culture on a local level. And certainly the CRD has benefited from that commitment from Metchosin over the years and certainly values it tremendously. And without placing too much of a burden on you, there is a huge valuation and appreciation for the contributions of Metchosin at the Arts Commission and in the participation of what you do in providing those opportunities for local artists. I think that legacy really has to be an important thing for you to consider. I know very well, going in my community, the same challenges that you're having with your budgets. It's never easy, and every dollar is really important, and I understand how you're looking for every savings capacity. But I think Chris has shown you that the investment that you put in is not just a net advantage to you on money, but I would argue that the leadership that you have the opportunity to show and really the value and quality of how you can promote arts and culture across the region and showcase Metchosin producers as well, Metchosin artists as well, is really quite invaluable. So I hope that you'll consider what is essentially our request that you stay with us and that somehow can work its way into your budget for the future. So thank you for your time, and we're happy to take any questions if you have any.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Committee, do you have any questions for these representatives of CRD Arts? Councillor Gray?
No question, just a big thank you. Thanks for coming out this evening.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
And
same
for
here.
all the
Thanks
work.
very much for coming out.
Our pleasure.
Thank you.
And any comments from the community before they leave?
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you very much for coming. I appreciate that.
Good luck.
I apologize for the fonts. That actually is our, I believe, we've had a problem before with our old laptop, which probably should put into our budget.
Do feel free to share that with any of your public. That's all
Thank
public
you.
information. So if anyone asks, you're welcome to have anyone look at it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Thanks so much.
Okay, so we'll move on to public participation. Is there anyone from the community that would like to speak? Please come up to the mic, state your name and the street in which you live, please.
Barrett Fullerton, 384 Chapel Heights Drive. I received an email earlier from Abby Omatoso informing me of the decision that was going to be made tonight. I requested more information. I got another email from Ian with the staff report included, which I read shortly before the meeting this evening. So my brain is a little scrambled, as my thoughts may be as well, and I put things together quite rapidly. When reading the staff report, I was a little bit confused. In the background and the discussion, it appeared to be in support of the CRD Arts and Grants program, although you're looking into the withdrawal from participation. The report, 2 organizations have received more in grants than we have contributed to the program. I would suggest that other Metchosin nonprofit groups could also benefit from grants should we continue to contribute. As stated in the section discussion, that from a regional perspective, residents move between municipalities to attend other events. I personally attend all of the Pacific Opera presentations, most of the Victoria Symphony, as do many other Metchosinites and many other activities as well. I'm a patron of both of those organizations too. Should we withdraw, nonprofit organizations in Metchosin would no longer be eligible to receive grants. And I feel that we should support the art groups in other Victoria area municipalities that so many Metchosinites attend. I would hope that this council would continue to participate in the CRD Arts and Grants program. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fullerton. Anyone else?
Valerie Lambert. I live on Circle Drive, 3949. Mayor and Council, fellow Metchosinites, honored guests, online viewers. First, may I commend the Mayor and Council for their due diligence in inquiring about outgoing monies. This perhaps bodes well for Metchosin's fiscal responsibility going forward. My comments tonight address Council's motion to investigate participation in the CRD Arts and Culture Service. Much can be said, but I will limit my comments to a few important points. Money spent developing community arts remains in the community where it employs local people and stimulates local economies. This pattern is unlike the case for large and expensive internationally based productions that leave town with your dollars. Local productions not only provide jobs for the artists, but there are a multitude of trades like electricians, carpenters, stagehands, lighting and sound engineers, graphic artists that are gainfully employed in arts productions. CRD Arts and Cultural Service helps out venues like theaters, galleries, and libraries. Metchosin should not leave the CRD Arts and Cultural Service. Arts groups, especially performing arts groups, are just getting back on their feet after the brutal effects of the health restrictions on their livelihoods. Furthermore, Metchosin is well known for its diverse arts community. In fact, visual arts is one of Metchosin's primary industries. You cannot dismiss it with a stroke of a computer key. Relationship is important. One must think beyond the borders of this district. Metchosin's relationship with the Greater Victoria community will be jeopardized if Metchosin leaves the Arts and Culture Service. Why, you say, would this happen? Because all the other regions will be receiving less from the province for their initiatives if Metchosin withdraws support. I know you are a new council, and new politicians are determined to make their mark. It's well known that new councils and new school boards are quick to cut the music and arts programs when faced with their first financial dilemma, only later to regret their decision. Much is lost in the interim. Don't make that first big mistake. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else?
Hi there, I'm Joel Roper, 661 Pears Road. I just wanted to take a moment to publicly support the variance request for 4080 Dupree Road. They're wonderful neighbors, and I just don't want to see anything change. We've got a good community vibe going on, so thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kate Rubin, and I'm thankful to be here. Thank you to Mayor and Council for this. I'm just adding to what people have said. I don't live in Metchosin, but one of my colleagues, Jenny Luther, does, and she lives on Happy Valley Road. Myself and Anne Cirilla are here just from the outer community. We are theatre artists who have been working for the past 17 years with William Head on Stage, and have been very involved in the productions out there over the years, and also in the facilitation of basically workshops and ways in which to give the men support through the use of theatre skills. So as an artist, I have seen the benefits of the CRD funding for William Head on Stage. It's been a huge support for them to be able to maintain what they do out there. And many of you probably know in the audience that William Head on Stage is 41 years now going, and it's quite an important aspect of Metchosin and also the Greater Victoria area, and now also across Canada. It's considered to be one of the most unique prison theatre experiences in Canada and in actually the US. So I just want to support the idea, or support the fact that we do not agree with Metchosin, if at all possible, to step away from this kind of support, because not only does Metchosin itself benefit with the artists coming, and also the men themselves coming out with much better, I would say, skill sets and values and life skills that help them transition out into the community. So without any further ado, thank you for listening, and I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anything else? Yes, go ahead.
Karen Hoffman, 1530 Neald Road. I had not intended on speaking to this issue, but I fully support Metchosin continuing their support for the CRD Arts Council, and at $9 per household, I don't really think that's an onerous ask of the citizens of Metchosin. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Stacey. We're 4096 Dupree Drive. I too would like to voice my support for the variance application at 4080 Dupree. As a nearby neighbor, I see no problem with the proposed amendments and would like to support this family in seeing their project through to fruition. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Anyone else like to speak?
Thank you. I'm sorry I was late. I'm speaking to the variance permit application. I just wanted to clarify, in the report it says that the application went to the Development Variance Board and was rejected, which is correct. But I just wanted to clarify the basis of that. The Variance Board is very keen to make sure that it stays within its mandate, which is only for minor variances, and consideration of major variances are entirely council's business. And when we had a look at the bylaw on secondary suites, it seemed clear that the intent of the bylaw was either for entirely separate dwelling units, self-contained, or to be part of the house, and this was neither, and therefore we thought this constituted therefore a major variance, and at that point our consideration stopped. So we did not put our minds at all to whether the difficulty or the hardship imposed warranted a major variance. That's entirely your consideration. We didn't put our mind to that at all, and that was not the basis of our decision. It was entirely on not trespassing on your jurisdiction.
Thank you very much. Are there any other participants for the public participation of the finance meeting? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next part of the agenda. The adoption of the minutes. Page 3, Finance Committee meeting, January 9th. Councillor Gray?
I can move adoption. I just have one amendment to suggest.
And that would be?
Just in the first line of under public participation, it reads, Gary Smurfett, resident, commented on the draft 2023-2027 5-year financial plan, noting that the documentation was incomplete. And I think it might better read, noting that he considered the documentation was incomplete.
Any comments on this? No.
I would second adoption.
Second, thank you. Okay, so we have a move and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. And to page 7, Special Finance Committee budget meeting, January 23rd.
I approve adoption.
Moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Epp. Discussion? Yes, Councillor Gray.
I just wondered if it might be appropriate to make an amendment on under road safety crossing guard, requested amount $10,000. The statement there, the second bullet says funding of $10,000 for crossing guard is a minimal in terms of liability, ensuring the crossing is safe as motorists will see a crossing guard. And I might add the words, is safe as possible. We were debating what the measure of safety was on that particular point.
Mayor Little?
Just in terms of a point of order here, so what these agenda minutes are as recorded, not what the interpretation of what they should be. So let's stick to what was recorded by the recorder without interjecting our own personal opinion regarding that.
Any other comments, committee? Councillor Gray?
Yeah, no, not so much my personal opinion, but keeping the minutes accurate. I'm happy to accept it as you wish.
Through the chair, I think they're accurate as they are.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a mover and a seconder. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Councillor Shukin?
I'm in favor, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, so on to reports, page 15. Oh, this is me. Councillor's update. So council has been meeting and staff to do the 2023 budget discussions. They're underway. We had I believe it was our third meeting just previously to this one, starting at 4:30 this afternoon. Public engagement is key. We really do want to hear what you have to say, whether that's by email, phone, or participating in the meetings. It's these are your tax dollars that we're deliberating on, and I know that there's a lot of concerns with, our assessments are going up, projected assessments of 11%. We're already talking 11.7% of the budget. That's a starting point. That's not to say that's where we're going to stay. That's why we're having these meetings, to do deliberations, to figure out our wants and our needs of our community and whether or not we keep with the same services. So we do want to hear what you have to say. Everything's going up all over the place. We've seen that coming out of COVID. It's a little bit frightening sometimes, but clearly it's quite emotional too. So please do speak up, let us know, it's really important to us. Some of the big topics that we're facing, of course, this year is policing costs. Those are ongoing negotiations. I don't know when those will be finalized, but I'm hopeful it'll be soon. We also, it's not in our budget just yet, but we will be looking into the future, not too far, I don't think, of a fire hall replacement, possibly 2024 to 2026. But there's a steering committee for that, and so there's conversations happening there as well. A lot of research still needs to be done, and it's a dynamic group that is delving into lots of different facets of information to bring back to council. School site is, we've had a presentation about what's happening with the school in just recent meetings. We now need to have a plan for it to be more fiscally sustainable. So the community involvement will be helpful there as well. Roads, we have a paving schedule of $1 million a year, so this is something that we're going to have to look really hard and fast at, and whether or not we need to reassess that perhaps and see what is needed and what isn't, and there's a couple different ways we can do that. My role on the West Shore Parks and Recreation Board, I'm newly appointed to this board. There are 5 owners, and there are an incredible incredible team that we work with as staff there, of about the same amount of people. Recently, the council had a tour of the facility. It's 108 acres. It's a multifaceted recreational facility, a very dynamic team of staff throughout. When COVID hit, they laid off a lot of their staff, but they kept the ones that they could by making them more diverse and doing cross trainings, so where they had fewer hours they were able to work in different departments and that, so that was great. And as they're onboarding and opening up some of the services, they have a major waiting list right now for pool and different activities, so they're starting to train their own staff for their swim lessons, and they have lifeguarding program that they're actually training for. And then those staff, they have an agreement where they pay a certain amount of their fees for these courses, and then the staff stay on staff as opposed to being recruited and then leaving. So it's a good investment. The facility consists of a swimming pool, weight room, indoor sports complex, 2 skating rinks, 2 preschools. There's daycare there as well. There's multi-purpose rooms, lawn bowling, velodrome, BMX track, jogging trail, a number of different fields for soccer, rugby, baseball, that sort of thing. Wild play, right now there's a skateboard park that is being constructed, so I encourage you to go down and watch behind it. It's all gated, but you can watch the process of that. It's moving along very, very fast. They also have a couple of tenants at the Grizzlies team that is a tenant in the Q Center, and the Shamrocks lacrosse team also that provide a service to our community with those 2 different sports. I was newly appointed to the Greater Victoria Public Library Board. I'm just learning about them. I've had one online meeting, so the onboarding of orientation has just started in January. And I will be on their finance committee as well. They have two subcommittees. One is planning and the other one is finance. They have a lot of projects that they're going to be doing in the next 5 years. One of the biggest ones is the replacement of the Central Branch Library. There's some really interesting information if you go to any of their websites of the services that they do provide. As much as they might have been closed through COVID, there still were services available online. I haven't used the library as much, guiltily, in recent years since my kids are much older, but we always did a swim lesson and went over to the library every Friday. And there's so many wonderful programs that they have there. So our tax dollars do pay for that, and it's an amazing resource to have in our community. So I would encourage people to look into, if you're not already, to look into some of the services that these facilities offer Metchosin residents.
Councillor Donaldson?
Yes.
Yeah, if I could comment, thanks for providing these updates. So this really provides us context. I don't think we've, in the last 4 years anyways, we didn't hear a lot about the West Shore Parks and Recreation. This is really great because you didn't say it, but these are two of our big budget items is in terms of our service fees for the Greater Victoria Public Library and also for the West Shore Parks and Recreation. So you may have stayed off a lot of public input regarding pulling out of those organizations as well. So thank you for that.
And on that, I'd just like to say, because I know that this is something that's been sort of brewing, is we pay for the West Shore Parks and Rec. We pay for just a little over 4% per household. The Greater Victoria Public Library, they base their fees on our assessments. And so, as I said, our assessment has gone up in Metchosin to 11%. And so when I went through my literature today, and I think this is the most correct I can get, it's 11.8%. But there's a wealth of information, like I say, at the library. There's all sorts of, there's reading clubs, there's interest in engaging in anything to do with literature, world languages, CDs and DVDs that you can borrow and that sort of thing. So it's a really fun place to get some information for all ages, even ancestry. So a lot of historical stuff. So please do check them out. You do pay for that. Okay, so that's the councillor's update. So turning to page 17. For the staff report regarding the CRD Arts contribution. And so we have two options from staff. Yes?
Yeah, just go ahead, I'm just going to make a motion.
Okay, so we have two options from staff. The first option is that the Finance Committee recommend to Council to direct staff to begin the withdrawal process of the CRD Arts and Grants Program for 2024, or that Finance Committee receives the report for information.
I'm going to move option 2, that the Finance Committee receive the report for information.
Second.
I would second that motion. And wish to speak to it very briefly.
Okay, so Councillor Epp has made a motion, and Councillor Shukin is seconding it with a comment to come. Go ahead, Councillor Shukin.
Okay, I just want to pass on to staff. Thanks for putting this information together. Very informative in terms of looking at the amount of money we contribute to the arts grant, and also some of the mechanics and the background of the arts grant. I do not support withdrawing. I believe that such a move is it's just such a provincial, we're insular looking step, and we are all members of the CRD, and we all benefit from what goes on within the CRD communities. And I just think it would send the wrong message, and I think it'd be very wrong based on the spirit of this community in terms of withdrawing
Councillor Shukin, I can completely agree with you. And it's very enriching to have the variety of arts that the CRD Arts Board does offer to the region. And so any further discussion? Yes, Councillor Ebb?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly agree. On Saturday night I went to watch a film, Bones of Crows, and it was really quite amazing, very intense. But at the beginning of it, there was, this lists and lists of all these different organizations that got together to manage to produce this quite incredible film. And now they've been touring it around the province, and it was free to go and watch. And I just, it kind of reminded me of how the collaboration, and in our case of the communities, to support the arts is just so important. As everybody's mentioned, we all, it's not just about Metchosin. I mean, I'm sure all of us, go to plays once in a while, or the symphony, or watch a pop-up, theater presentation somewhere, and there's certainly people in the community involved. And I just think it's an extremely important thing to keep supporting the arts in our community and elsewhere.
Thank you. Marianne?
Yeah, I concur with everything that's been said. I think it would be short-sighted of us to withdraw from the CRD Arts, just to give some context, and kudos to the staff for bringing this forward. If we were to consider it, which I don't hear any of that yet, if we were to consider, we would need to give, there's a 6-month time point. And so they were doing their due diligence to bring this forward, to match the timelines for that for 2024. If we missed it, it'd be 2025. So they were doing their due diligence in bringing this forward. And one of the things I always say when people ask me why am I such a big supporter of the arts, and I was at the Greater Victoria Youth Orchestra yesterday. They are also supported by the CRD, fabulous program. What I always say is that we're 99% identical as a human species, but what defines us is the arts and culture. And that's what defines us as a region and as Metchosin. So I'm highly in favor of the arts community, both in Metchosin and regionally.
Thank you. Councillor Gray?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to Barrett and Kate, Valerie, and Karen who spoke tonight, and those who sent us letters on this issue. I said I'm an alternate director at the CRD, and have just gone through all the orientations that they provide. And this was one of the big presentations for me, was the arts, how the arts are funded through the CRD and the work that's done there. The issues for me relate to, we're just a small part of a big operation for the greater good. And that's important to me that we contribute. We have a very small involvement, but we get a big payback in terms of our ability to enjoy the arts in the city. And then the third thing I wanted to mention was that we've taken on this idea that we're going to maintain a green space here in Metchosin for the benefit of the CRD overall. In other words, our regional role is to be a green space. We talked earlier in other meetings about the carbon sink and just the benefits that we have, and we welcome people from the CRD to come out here to enjoy the green. In order to maintain that regional growth strategy that stops at our borders, to maintain the urban containment boundary that stops at our borders, means that we need to support things that are going on in the urban center, whether it be housing for density, whether it be the arts for the benefits for people there, but also the benefits for us. You can't afford the kind of arts that we enjoy in the big city without contribution of all of us citizens that are in the area. And just a special shout out to the William Head art program. Did you say 40? My golly. More than 4 decades of work going on there, and what a wonderful contribution that's been. This came up to us in council through MACA, the presentation they made a week or 2 ago, asking for a switch up in the grants, and it seems to be not a very good idea, and I'm of course going to vote in support of the motion.
So with that being said, I'd like to call the question. All in favor?
I'm in favor.
None opposed?
Could you repeat the motion that we've, just for the public to understand? Or I can, that the Finance Committee receive the report from information only. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so on page 23 of your agenda, we have some correspondence from the Central Saanich Food Hub's feasibility study. This report is a really good document for our area of varied farmers that we have in Metchosin. Our agricultural advisory select committee has been having meetings in the last couple of years to look at how we can broaden our horizons, and we have a varied amount of different kinds of farmers and stuff here. So one of the things that they're looking at is having an agricultural plan, and it does enable us to be able then to apply for grants and such. Something we're also talking about at the budget table as well, because there's a cost to putting these sorts of things together. This document actually will give us some ideas of them that we could put into that plan. So I will be, because the Agricultural Advisory Committee is also in my portfolio, I will be sharing it with them. Just briefly on what the feasibility study for Central Saanich was, they're looking at a community processing area for like a community kitchen and a place to produce food. It's not just growing. So food processing and community kitchens, they only have actually 2 community kitchens in their community. I think we have like 7. They're not really community kitchens, but we have quite a few kitchens here that we could open up to the public, I suppose. Anyways, some other things that were interesting that we could use as takeaway is they have an online ordering platform. A couple of our farmers do that. There is an interest, or there has been in the past, to do a food cooperative here, whether that is in a retail space, or we could do it in conjunction with an online platform. They have worked with retail outlets. What they're finding now is their grocery stores aren't supporting local food. One of the big companies, which is Thrifties, was bought out by Sobeys. So they bring a lot of their foods in. It's a Quebec company, so they bring foods in from elsewhere. They're not supporting the local food movement as much as they used to. Other things that would be interesting in the document for Metchosin would be the marketing and the distribution, ideas of equipment rental, or we've had residents suggest having an equipment library where you could borrow equipment. Instead of everybody having a rototiller, you could probably borrow one. Health and safety in the food production is always a concern, not just in restaurants, but certainly on farms as well. They are having an issue with abattoirs in Central Saanich, and I was really disappointed that they didn't actually acknowledge that Metchosin has an abattoir. We weren't mentioned at all, so we'll have to let them know. But the one thing they did note was that there isn't an abattoir for poultry, and we do know that from our farmers in this part of the CRD, that we have to go further and further afield to take our animals to a facility for processing. Alternatively, mobile abattoirs is something that is not new to some of us farmers. This is something that in my family we raise sheep and pigs, and it was probably about 20 years ago we talked about abattoirs, and or not abattoirs, mobile abattoirs. The feasibility of that, I don't know how it would work. At the time, it sounded like a good idea, but there were a lot of regulations with the government changing with processing plants like abattoirs. And so a lot of two businesses we dealt with, which were like mom and pop operations. You could take your animals in, they would do the processing. It was a one-stop shop. We didn't have to travel from one place to another, which is really hard on the animals, and it's not good for the environment. They went out of business because the government asked them to. The regulations just changed so often, it just wasn't cost effective to keep a small business. So we're very fortunate now that Metchosin, our lamb and pork, can actually stay here and be processed. They grow a happy life with us when they are with us, outdoors, not in a factory, and that's just our family. So and it's all government inspected, grade A. So. So the Metchosin Agriculture Committee, I'm hoping that this will be an asset for them. Other things that the things that we do or ambitions we have is to promote the Mochosen grown. Some of our members are involved with the local farmers market, which is there's a wait list for getting them to the market. Yeah, so there's some really good ideas in this, and it was quite a bit of reading to go through, but it'd be an asset for us to have this. So I would like to just ask for a motion to receive this document and for it to be put onto the agenda of the next Agriculture Advisory Select Committee, which should be within the next month.
I'll move that motion to send this to the Agriculture Advisory Select Committee for their review and to receive this for information.
Thank you. Moved by Mayor Little and seconded by Councillor Gray. Any further discussion? Yes.
Maybe just we could ask the Agriculture Committee to help us with answering the questions asked by the writer of the letter, Britt Burnham, Manager of Community Engagement, District of Saanich.
Okay. Mayor Little?
Yeah, I like their idea. I think it's visionary for Central Saanich. We're not quite there in Mochosen. We don't have the capital to have a food hub here. It's a great idea for the future, but I think it's a learning opportunity for the councillor that has the agriculture in their portfolio to get to know what they're doing in terms of their food hub, how they're financing it, and so I would suggest that the councillors reach out and talk to, I think it's Zeb King, Councillor Zeb King. If not, you can reach out to Mayor Ryan Windsor and ask for those contacts. It's a great idea.
Thank you, I'll do that. Okay. Moved and second, all in favor?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we don't have any bylaws or other business, so I'd ask for an adjournment to the Finance Committee.
Move to adjourn.
Moved by Councillor Gray, seconded by Councillor Epp. All in favor? Opposed?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start the meeting. So this is the council meeting for February 6th, 2023. I'll take a motion to approve the agenda as amended with the pink items. So this is correspondence from Johnny, Chelsea, and Eden Rands to be added to 10A of the agenda. Moved by Mayor Little, seconded by, okay, I'll even do it that way. Moved by Councillor Donaldson, seconded by Councillor Gray. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thanks, Jay. Okay, we have a presentation from Alison Leduc regarding anchorages. Welcome.
Thank you.
Speak directly into mine.
Okay, I will try. So, yes, my name is Alison Leduc. My presentation is related to item 7A, the proposed resolution for the Association of the Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities Convention with respect to reducing freighter anchorages outside the Port of Vancouver. I'm happy to answer any questions either as we go or at the end. I'm not sure what your protocol is. But I'd like to begin by saying that I'm not pretending to be an expert. I'm interested if anybody has credible sources of information that they'd like me to look at or that should be considered by, but however, the deadline to submit resolutions to the AVICC is this Thursday. So I am hoping that you will agree with me, ask that there's sufficient information in the draft resolution and in the presentation tonight to send the resolution to the AEICC. So I've included written references in the footnotes and so on. I've also reached out to Transport Canada and Port of Vancouver and the Pacific Pilotage Association for more information quite a while ago and received no response. I'm also waiting to hear from a faculty member at UBC Saanich School of Business. She specializes in governance and innovation in maritime transport. There's questions that I have, and I think that you probably have, and may ask Kat about. Well, what are the definitive list of factors that are creating the congestion in the Port of Vancouver, and why hasn't that been fixed, and so on, and what explains the drastic increase in the use of anchorages in the Salish Sea in the last decade. So, still trying to find that out. I know some of the factors, but not all of them, I think. And also, I think another really important question is whether there's any movement within Transport Canada and or the Port of Vancouver towards infrastructure upgrades, efficiencies, and vessel arrival systems that have reduced or eliminated the need for anchorages around the world. So, more information to come, but I think we have enough to proceed tonight. So, freighter anchorages. Just briefly go through this because I saw that it was actually loaded into the agenda package and it's available online. So this, I included the URL because it's not easy to see, so you can always check it out for yourself. But basically there are 5 anchorages at Royal Roads, there's 5 anchorages at Constance Bank, so those are the 2 sections that are off of our waters, and then Southern Gulf Islands 33, and then there's Port of Vancouver has 28 itself. So you can see how dense they are in the Southern Gulf Islands, which is considered a separate section. We're not part of the Southern Gulf Islands. It's just another view of those Southern Gulf Islands anchorages. And so as of January 22, when I took that screenshot, there were 23 freighters, and some have been there more than 3 weeks. Here's a chart of the 5 anchorages at Royal Roads, so you can see just in respect to, between Albert Head and Esquimalt. And then Constance Bank is further off, so it's in a sort of a triangle there with Ross Bay Cemetery and Constance Bank and William Head. And so this again is just to orient people that this is from the Transport Safety Board of Canada investigation report about the fire on board the Zim Kingston, because that's where they put it, was Constance Bank. And so the firefighting efforts extended over 5 days at that anchorage. So anchorages, it's almost all bulk carriers or freighters that are waiting to be loaded with coal or grain at the Port of Vancouver. We don't really get any container ships because they're processed very efficiently. So, and a third of the coal shipped through the Port of Vancouver comes from the US because the Washington and Oregon, I think California as well, have been shutting down their own coal ports due to environmental concerns. So coal from the western US is now shipped through Vancouver. And that's certainly one of the factors that's led to the increase in anchorages. But I still haven't been able to figure out why the dramatic increase in anchorages, because the actual increase in bulk cargo is only about 10%, and there's been this massive increase in the use of anchorages. So, at the bottom there, it just shows you the magnitude of the increase. So, and that's for Southern Gulf Islands. I don't have the figures for the anchorages off of our coast. So, the reason that I got interested in it is because of the potential for and the actual environmental harms. Each ship at anchor produces about 10 tons of greenhouse gases a day. The underwater noise is very harmful to pretty much everything that lives in the water. There's seabed scouring from the chains, and there's scrubber discharge. And I actually spoke to a senior ocean scientist on Friday, and he was actually, his biggest concern was the scrubber discharge, which sort of surprised me. So seabed scouring from Anchorage, you can see that the actual length of the anchor chains is quite a lot longer than the depth, up to 10 times. So that illustration isn't really accurate in that sense, but it does show you just the habitat fragmentation and the loss of biodiversity and ecosystem disruption and so on. Also carbon storage in the seabed. It reduces that. So this is a little bit better illustration, although it's showing you a small boat. But I read that it's up to 10 times the depth of the water at times. There's a formula. And so if the Royal Roads anchorages, say, are 25 meters in depth, then you could have 250 meters of anchor chain on the seabed. And then as the ships swing in the tides and the wind, it just scours it. Yeah. So scrubbers, ships burn heavy fuel oil, which releases high amounts of sulfur and other nasty things into the air. The scrubbers use a fine mist of water to remove that sulfur from the ship exhaust, but then they actually just wash it into the ocean. So that's really not good. And let's see, there's this recent Swedish study that found that it has severe toxic effects on food sources for cod, herring, and other important fish species. And so the VFPA is the Vancouver Fraser Port Authority, and they have jurisdiction over the Port of Vancouver, but they don't have jurisdiction over the ships in our anchorages because these are not part of the anchorages themselves are not part of the Port of Vancouver. So they have begun the process of banning the discharge of scrubber wash water, but only within the Port of Vancouver boundaries. As far as I know, and according to UBC, within the last few months, they're still allowed to discharge in our water. And so then just a few accident risks. So this was all new to me, between 2015 and 2020, there were 102 anchor dragging incidents on the BC coast. In 2020, a freighter dragged anchor and punched a hole in another freighter. Luckily, no spills, but a month later, another freighter dragged anchor and came close to beaching itself near Ladysmith. And then this is quite interesting to me, that ships in distress are often sent to Constance Bank, which is off of our water, because that is known to be highly valuable fish habitat. And yet it's used for emergency anchorage for ships in distress. So, and then the last one, bunkering is allowed at the Royal Roads anchorages. I was told by the harbor master at the DND that he's been there for 3.5 years and it's only ever happened once, but the fact is that bunkering is fueling at sea and it is allowed. So it just seems like possibilities for spills there. So there are efficiencies, and especially these vessel arrival systems that are used now around the world, and they have really reduced the anchorages. So for instance, Los Angeles implemented a new system in November of 2021, and the number of ships at anchor was reduced from 86 to 17. Similar results with the Port of Oakland. And I think the important point is that the new systems don't reduce the overall number of ships coming into the port, but they significantly reduce anchorages and emissions, of course, from anchored vessels. So the BC government does have jurisdiction over the seabed, even though transport is within the federal jurisdiction. And I just wanted to point out that this idea of forming a sort of a committee, Adam Olson from Saanich North, working with Transport Canada, Vancouver Fraser Port Authority, and BC Chamber of Shipping, which represents the shipping industry, but also First Nations and other residents. And so they formed a sort of a working group and to see if there's anything that can be done, and just certainly to make sure that the best information is available, and that rather than just increasing the number of anchorages, maybe they back up a bit and look at the root causes. So there's just a summary of the information, and This is one of my favorite fishes. It's called a red Irish lord. And these are photographs from the water off of Vancouver Island. This is not from the tropics. And so, but I think it's important to note things like, computer simulations indicate that if the infrastructure at the Port of Vancouver was upgraded and efficiencies were really found, and then they had a vessel arrival system that matched up the loading capacity and the freighters, they could possibly reduce anchorages enough so that our anchorages would not be needed by freighters. And that is an alabaster nudibranch. Again, taking in the water off of Vancouver Island. And I think it's important to note that residents and MPs and Islands Trust have been lobbying hard, and they are getting attention. And one of the options that has been put forward by a few people is Victoria doesn't have nearly as many anchorages as the Southern Gulf Islands, so why don't you put some more ships down there? And so I just think that, it's maybe it's an investment for us to maybe get involved and say, rather than increasing the anchorages, let's look at increasing efficiencies and reducing the need for anchorages. So I think that's it.
Okay.
Any questions?
Okay, thank you very much. It's very informative. I had no idea about scrubbers and other things, and the deleterious effects of the anchors. So, Council, would you like to, we've lost Jay, we'll just keep going. Council, are there any questions for Alison Leduc? Yeah, I wanted to ask a question if there's no others. Do you see any movement with Transport Canada and the Port of Vancouver, any willingness? It just seems like it's happened. And it's not just actually in the Southern Gulf Islands. When you are on the south sides of Dodds Narrows, and if you look down the channel, you can see the anchors parked in front of Ladysmith and also up towards Galliano as well. And they've just appeared in the last 4 years, really. Yeah.
So, and they're actually considering putting another 5 anchorages at the top end of Galliano.
Oh.
And so, do I see any movement? The Port of Vancouver has been involved in a consultation process, but only for the Southern Gulf Islands. It excludes us. And so that's kind of why I got interested. I attended a webinar about it, and then realized it doesn't apply to us. So I don't know why that is, but so they are considering, various options, but according to one sort of observer, they are not seriously considering a vessel arrival system or upgrades to the infrastructure that would make a serious difference. So I think more work is needed.
And that's where it's made a difference, is when there's changes made right at the site where there's problems, right?
Yeah. So the infrastructure, just as an example, it seems very odd to me, but they can't load grain in the rain in Vancouver, and it rains 165 days a year on average, and so then that just holds everything up. So they do have infrastructure in other ports where they can load grain, because you can't load wet grain. I know that, but there are solutions in other ports, right? And so things like that affect us. Mind you, the Royal Roads anchorages seem to be mostly coal freighters.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for Alison?
I do have one question, but first a comment. Alison, great work in putting this together and linking what is it like a subterranean or subsurface environmental issue to like some of the standard or just some of the business and process practices that are at hand. One question: do you think that there's any room to go after like anchoring practices themselves? And it was quite telling when you mentioned that like an anchor chain in 25 meters of water might actually be 250 meters. There's safety considerations for sure, but I just wonder if there's a way of attacking that part of the problem as well.
So some ports around the world have fixed anchorages so that they are actually, the ships attach above the seabed, so they don't need to anchor that, but unless you have some sort of a fixed point, you can't have anchors, or you can't have ships just, being not securely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So unless you have some sort of, again, it's an infrastructure upgrade that would be necessary, and yeah.
Okay.
And at me ask, Councillor Shuka, we discussed that, and there's an issue with the fixed anchorages, which is that the whales get tangled up in them.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not as popular in this part of the world.
Gotcha.
And then there's things like the scrubber discharge that could be addressed by Transport Canada. And again, I haven't gotten any information from Transport Canada about whether they are actually considering that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Councillor Ed?
Well, thank you. That was a really great report. And obviously we have the resolution ready to go to the ABICC. But I was wondering, besides that, what do you think council should do?
Well, I really like the idea of forming that sort of forum like Adam Olson did, and see if there's any, I'm just sort of poking around the outside.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any inside information, and so I'm thinking that, if we could maybe go through our MLA or another, because I know Murray Rankin, who is the MLA for Oak Bay, in his materials, he was quite interested in seabed as well. So it may be, MLAs from the whole Victoria area, I don't know. I did ask Marianne Alto on the way in whether there was anybody in Victoria that was interested in the issue, and she didn't recall that there had been any. But I think once people find out just the potential for harm, they might be more interested.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Any other comments? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll be readdressing this on page 21, 7A of the agenda. Okay, moving on to public participation. Does anybody wish to speak at this meeting? 4 minutes per person, and please identify yourself.
Patty Whitehouse, 5311 Rocky Point Road. And I want to thank Council for the effort that you're putting into keeping closer to your mics and speaking clearly into them. It's noticeable. I really appreciate it. I also want to address a comment that was, yeah, good job. A comment that was made at last council meeting about the possibility that perhaps council should get better mics because these ones perhaps aren't good enough. My first comment on that is they're much better than the ones that council had when I first moved to Metchosin in 2014. Second is that they may not be the best in the world, but if you use them correctly, they are quite effective. And the third is that it doesn't matter how expensive a mic is, if you don't use it correctly, it's not useful. So my suggestion would be stick with what you've got and keep on practicing what you're practicing. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak at public participation? Seeing none, we'll move on to the adoption of the minutes. This is on page 3 of your council agenda. So we have the council meeting from January 23rd, 2023. What say ye? Moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Gray. Comment, concerns? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor? Councillor Shukin? Did you say something? Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, moving on to the special council meetings of January 24th. This is on page 9 of your agenda.
I'll move adoption.
Moved by Councillor Epp, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Comments? Call the question. All in favor? Councillor Shukin?
I'm in support, thank you.
Okay. Opposed? Seeing none, motion carried. the special council meeting of January 31st. That's on page 11. This is the special council meeting January 31st. Let's see.
Moved for acceptance.
Moved by Councillor Donaldson, seconded by Councillor Epp. Yeah, Councillor Shukin. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Carried. Okay. Receipt of the minutes. This is on page 13 of your council package. This is the District of Metchosin Board of Variance minutes. I'll take a motion to receive the minutes.
Move to receive.
Moved by Councillor Donaldson, seconded by Councillor Epp. Comments? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, moving quickly to the mayor's report. Okay, first off, I'd just like to thank the fire chief. She attended a conference this week, the BC Wildlife Service training conference. She was also asked to give a presentation regarding role in wildfire and her role in the administration of a structure protection. So I thank her for that and thank her for representing our community so well. Moving on to other honors in the community. As I mentioned at the December 11th meeting, we attended a Royal Canadian Navy reception. We heard of two people within the community who received honors, and I thought we should actually name them. So Chief Petty Officer 2nd Class Ian Biller received the Order of Military Merit, and the District of Metchosin would like to send their congratulations on that. And then the second was the Chief Petty Officer, oh sorry, that was, am I getting these mixed up now? No? Chief Petty Officer. And then the, Sailor First Class Ralph Charles Chamberlain, CD, received the Commander of the Royal Canadian Navy Commendation. You can see here what he was recognized for. Very brave, this individual. Evidently, the Order of Military Merit is not given out very often, so I think it's worth mentioning. So congratulations to that community member as well. So please join me in recognizing and congratulating these two remarkable individuals. Okay, the second item is we have the coldest night of the year coming up. We invite members of the community to walk with us. We're walking in Souk as a part of Team Metchosin. We're registered on the website. Please consider donating to this cause and joining Metchosin and the Souk Council in Metchosin on February 25th. I hear we've raised more money of late. And anybody else have any comments, questions? Okay. Councillor Shukin, you still with us?
I am.
Okay, great. And thirdly, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the CRD. We had discussed earlier the CRD Arts Commission, but I thought I would give a bit of a summary because, as I've mentioned, we submit a lot of money to our involvement with the Capital Regional District, but we also receive a lot in return. So on Southern Vancouver Island, the Capital Regional District is a regional government. It is a government. It's with these 13 municipalities and 3 electoral areas. There is the Capital Region Housing Corporation as a part of that. The role of the CRD is to facilitate regional decision-making on that issue that transcend multiple boundaries and provide services efficiently and effectively throughout the region. Residents in our community are represented and participate and realize the benefits through 3 distinct types of CRD services: the regional, as I mentioned, with 13 municipalities; the sub-regional, where there's 2 or more jurisdictions are served; and at the local and electoral areas. So the CRD is governed by a 24-member board of directors, a member of the board of directors, and it's comprised of elected officials from the municipalities and the electoral areas. We have commissions as well. One of the committees that I chair, the Victoria Family Court and Youth Justice, is a delegated commission, but there's also Wander Fuca Water as well. So as a local government, the CRD develops partnerships to facilitate and deliver projects and service for a sustainable, livable, and a vibrant capital region. They conduct their business on Coast Salish and Nuchala territories, and they're very mindful of the relationship with the First Nations. Just to bring it back home, what we've been doing is at the CRD board table is orientation meetings and strategic priority setting. We've also recently adopted at the governance committee a motion to consider a new code of conduct. So as a municipality, we'll be able to take from that, from their developing this code of conduct. And of the 7 CRD boards, I've been appointed to the following: the Finance, the First Nations Committee, the Planning and Protective Services, and the Governance, and I was asked to chair the Governance Committee. And recently I was appointed the Vice Chair of the Greater Victoria Labour Relations Association. So I just thought I'd give you a little bit more context about what the CRD, what they do for us, their governance model, and I think at a future date I'll ask the CEO, Mr. Ted Robbins, to give us a presentation, maybe after the budget season. Okay. Any other comments? So with that, that is the mayor's report. So moving on to business arising on page 21 of your council agenda. Aha, okay, so now we're dealing with what Ellison was referring to in terms of the presentations. So as what we heard, there is potential risk to our coastal ecosystems. What is before you here is resolutions that could be made to the 2023 Association for the Vancouver Island Coastal Communities, or the AVICC. And Councillor Schuppen and Gray had worked on this, and so I'll hand it over to one of you to speak to this resolution. Councillor Schuppen or Gray?
Mayor Little, I would just one correction. This is Councillor Gray's work,
okay,
which I applaud and will support, but I will turn it over to him.
Okay, great. Councillor Gray.
Thank you. So I'd move that Council adopt the recommendation from the Metchosin Environmental Advisory Select Committee and endorse the following resolution towards reducing anchorages outside the Port of Vancouver. Whereas the Salish Sea is a sensitive marine ecosystem and critical habitat for many species, including endangered southern resident killer whales, and the use of freighter anchorages outside the Port of Vancouver for ships waiting to be loaded in the Port of Vancouver is extremely detrimental to the marine ecosystem. And whereas ports in other parts of the world have reduced or eliminated the need for freighter anchorages by upgrading infrastructure, increasing efficiencies, and implementing port call optimization systems, therefore be it resolved that the Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities and the Union of BC Municipalities request the federal government and the Vancouver-Fraser Port Authority to take all available actions to immediately reduce the use of freighter anchorages along southern Vancouver Island and the southern Gulf Islands, and that Transport Canada expand monitoring and inspection of freighters anchored outside the limits of the Port of Vancouver. If there's a seconder, I'll just offer a word or two.
Okay, I've got a motion on the table from Councillor Gray, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. You wish to speak to this?
Yeah, I just wanted to offer a special thanks to Alison Leduc, who's done a tremendous amount of work on this and preparing it all. We heard from you tonight, Alison. Thanks so much. And also to Rick Perron, who's been helping shepherd this through MEASC, and Tina Hansen, our Deputy CO, who's had a big part of getting all these documents together for us. It is obviously a serious issue with adverse environmental impacts and shoreline risks, and that's why we're moving to it. I wanted to just mention that in the past, I guess 2 weeks, we heard from a local resident here, Gay Goldie, who lives up on Delgada, and she pointed out the noise that they hear from the freighters and the bright sodium lights that are there have been a real problem to the community, the part of the Metchosin community that's over there. So there's a direct impact on Metchosin residents for these freighters as they're placed out at the Royal Bay Anchorage. Interestingly, Gay's spoken with Jimmy Pattison about it. Jimmy apparently owns a bunch of these freighters, and he owns the West Shore Terminal and the coal place over there. She's spoken with the pilotage authorities on a regular basis to ask them to turn off the sodium lights because they're very bright and it's not legal for them to be on at nighttime. Gay's had a significant involvement, and she's been helping us just think through some of these things. So it's a regional issue. The federal government's involved, but it's also a local issue. And just to mention one other thing is that because of some other work that the council's engaged in around shorelines, I was asked to talk to some of the council members in Colwood. And I heard this evening from David Grove. I also spoke with Ian Ward, but David was in touch to say that it's too late for Colwood to provide a formal endorsement to this resolution for the annual general meeting of the Vancouver Island Coastal Communities. But he expects that we'll have good support from council members, various council members, when it comes to a vote at the conference. And then finally, just a word so people are aware, there is another consultation that the province has just launched looking for advice about the shoreline and issues here. And we're going to bring that through me asking. We have 3 issues, of course, the Trans Mountain issue, the anchorages, and then the marine response. So we have another way of putting an oar in the water, shall I say, with regards to the provincial jurisdiction, but that'll come to council at another time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Councillor, was it Chukin?
Well, thanks, Mayor Little. I just wish to speak in support of the resolution. Interestingly, I was speaking with a resident last week, and this resident mentioned that he didn't believe it was an issue for council to deal with, just given that it does lie in federal jurisdiction largely. And I have to say I disagree with that perspective because, of course, Metchosin is a coastal community, and the health and environmental vibrancy of the ocean does directly impact us. So I'm happy to support this motion. And again, I want to thank Allison, but also Bacon as well, who was one of the first people to raise this to council. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else wish to speak to this motion? Seeing none, I'm going to call the question. All in favor of sending this resolution? Okay. Councillor Shukin, do you voted in support? Yes. Okay. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay. Moving along to page 25. This is also this is for the 2023 resolutions to the same conference, the AVICC. This is the protection of the old growth forests. Does anybody wish to speak to this?
Mayor Little, if I could, I would make the following motion in support of providing this motion to the AVICC conference coming up. There has been considerable discussion about the support to protect old growth forests at this council table. I know we maybe disagree with how to offer that support, but I think we're all in line of understanding their importance. So I wish to make the following motion. Whereas climate change and the planetary biodiversity crisis are real, and old growth forests have significant economic, social, and environmental value as wildlife habitat, tourism resources, carbon sinks, and are vital sites for biodiversity in British Columbia, and are becoming increasingly rare in the province. And whereas the province's independent panel on old growth forests called on government to, quote, declare conservation of ecosystem health and biodiversity of British Columbia's forests as an overarching priority and enact legislation that legally establishes this priority for all sectors. Therefore, be it resolved that the AVICC and UBCM urge the government of BC to protect the lodge of all remaining old growth forest areas in the province.
Okay.
That's
moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Gray. Discussion. Anybody wish to speak to this motion? Okay, seeing none, call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, thank you. That motion's carried. Moving on to reports for action. Okay, a number of you are here to hear this. So this is the report from our planner regarding requests for the development variance permit. We've all been to the site. All 5 of us have been on a site visit. I wasn't at the site visit, but I was there 2 hours later. I was able to ask as many questions that I wanted about the variance, so I thank the owners of the property for that. I'd like to open this up for discussion, if I could ask somebody to make a motion regarding our options on page 29. Okay, Councillor Gray.
Yeah, I move that the council issue development variance permit 22.08.
Okay, that's moved by Councillor Gray, seconded by Councillor Epp. You've moved the motion. Would you like to speak to it?
Well, we've had the opportunity to look at this briefing note and make a site visit, and it would appear there's also letters of support for it from the neighborhood, and we don't think we've heard any negative views from the neighborhood for the variance that's being requested. While a major variance, as was explained earlier this evening, it seems appropriate under the circumstances.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gray. Councillor Epp.
No, it's like Councillor Gray said, we did visit the site, and I think that it all made sense to grant this variance.
Okay, great. Anything else? Councillor Donaldson, then Councillor Shukin. Go ahead, Councillor Donaldson.
One of the things that struck me as really interesting, I read it a number of times, and I was trying to wrap my head around the location of the secondary suite. And there's been, it went to the variance board, it was refused because of their mandate of minor or major variances. So the setbacks are interesting because of the way the highway is considered a different place than where their address is and this sort of stuff. So that was something new to learn. But the one thing that actually caught me was in the report on page 28, where it says the common wall definition is as follows, and this is in the land use bylaw. Common wall means a wall with a minimum horizontal dimension of 20.5 feet and a minimum vertical dimension of 7 feet, common to the dwelling unit and the secondary suite in a dwelling unit containing a secondary suite. And for the purposes of this definition, a garage or carport may not be considered part of a dwelling. So why it caught my attention is because while I was out campaigning last fall, a number of people had actually talked to me about common wall, and I didn't know too much about it, and now I know that much more. So in this particular case, there's 2 things. One, there's a variance for it to be considered as half the length, but the most outstanding thing for me is the fact that the 2 dwellings don't share a common wall. So back in the day when the community there was what we call a working group now. It wasn't then, I don't know what they call it, but there was 12 people appointed to a committee, 4 in favor, 4 against, and 4 neutral, to discuss secondary suites and detached secondary suites. And similar to our budget discussions, so it was very emotional, but legitimately so, because it has a lot to do with housing and how do we accommodate housing, and we have various different lays of land in Machosen. And so in the end, they did come together with an insert that they could put into the land use bylaw, which is part of what we use as our guiding principles for this community. So the residents of this property are going to be demolishing the existing garage, moving it closer to the house, putting it in, and making it strong enough to hold the suite above it. And in the mapping, there is a linking room, it's called. It says link, I'm not sure what actually it is. But the common wall doesn't exist between the 2 dwellings. So I question that is, I think that this is not acceptable. I would like to see actually an option 4, in that going back to find out if there could be like a drawing to show us the dwelling that is above the garage be attached to the main dwelling, the principal residence.
Okay.
But we don't have that option here from staff.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead.
Sure. Just to speak to that point, when I look at the drawings here, I can see the common wall referred to by the planner, and it seems to meet the definition. Simply put, the common wall is shorter than what's required under our bylaw. And having visited the site and looked at it, it seemed that this was an elegant solution to the question at hand. So I'm not confused by it. There's a common wall measuring half of what would generally be required. But as regards the issue of connection, you can't subdivide the property through there. There'll be a building in the way. And that was one of the considerations of this proximity and buildings can attach and that sort of thing.
Right, and because this property is less than 2 acres, you couldn't put a detached dwelling on it either. Yes.
Councillor Shukin, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I'm not, sorry, Councillor Donaldson's points are well taken. And what I did have a look, I had the same question, and I went back and looked at the drawings that were provided, and what you see is the breezeway, or the connecting link, actually goes right into what would be considered part of the living space. It does not connect to the garage, and there's no entry point into the garage. Had there been, I would share Councillor Donaldson's concerns, but I believe that the link, the connecting link, goes into a part that would be considered the dwelling. So I'm actually prepared to support the DDC here.
Okay. Councillor Epp, did you want to say anything?
Well, I think I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I would like to, I'd like to weigh in as well. What I'd like to thank these people for in putting forward the developed variance permit and for asking permission before they do it, because what we often see in the districts is people do it and then ask for forgiveness. So I thank the applicants not only for their foresight, but also for their patience, because I know that this has been a long process. So seeing no further discussion, I'm going to call the question. And the question, the motion that Councillor Gray put forward was to issue the developed variance permit 2020-2208. All in favor? Opposed? Okay. So we have Councillor Donaldson opposed. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, so that's the the variance permit for 4080 Dupree. Moving on to page 37. This is the the Matrosen Producers Association License of Occupation Renewal. So we have some options to consider here. You've got the license of occupation in front of you. No doubt you've all read it, as well as the site map at the end. What would you like to do? Councillor Epp.
I'll make a motion that council approve the license of occupation with the Matrosen Producers Association for a 3-year term as set out in the revised Schedule A, and authorize the mayor and CAO to execute the agreement.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Epp, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Discussion. Councillor Epp.
Well, I think that they've done a really good job with the market. It's extremely popular and a good, just a good fit in Machosen. So I certainly support them continuing.
Okay. Councillor Epp and Councillor Donaldson.
Yeah, I just want to bring to the attention of council that I met with the president and one of the members of the Producer Association, along with, I believe the fire chief was there, and the interim CAO, and we did a walkabout to check out the concern that the SAR had with vendors being in front of the emergency access to their buildings. So that has changed on their on Schedule A of their mapping. The other thing we did is we updated the mapping a little bit more to be reflective of the handicap parking, which has been there for about a half a dozen years. So they've lost that space. They should be able to put about 2 vendors next between the washrooms and the SAR building, with a possibility of a food truck or the Gilpin sausage or something, an eatery of some sort beside it. The other addition that we put in as an option, but because this is a 3-year contract or lease, it is an option that they are possibly going to explore because it has become so popular, is to have some vendors along the driveway in front of the Morley Meadow. And there are some safety factors that we still need to consider, and certainly parking on the municipal grounds is another factor. So these were just some of the adjustments that we made that we want to update their lease with, because some of the maps are, as we've found out recently, need a little bit more attention to.
Okay. We also have some flooding issues there that we need to deal with as a district as well. Flooding down from the meadow into the Metchosin Market stalls. Any other comments? Councillor Gray. We'll do Councillor Gray and then Councillor Shukin.
Sure, I'm going to speak in favor of getting the contract executed. I just had a comment though. Schedule A could be improved somewhat because the text of the contract refers to an easement seen on Schedule A. It would be good for Schedule A to have the word easement somewhere, and I think it's the emergency access, so it should say emergency access easement, just so for clarity, so the contract sort of all fits together. I see here, maybe Councillor Donaldson, you could clarify, but it looks to me like we are in fact providing the space in front of Morley's menu once this contract is completed.
That is the addition. It wasn't there before.
Great, and I think those are my comments for now. And perhaps the other word to say is thanks so much to the Metchosin Producers Association for the wonderful work that they do here in the community. I did have one other question I just realized, and that was about the food truck. And I'm kind of confused these days about who all might use who all the vendors might be. Would that be a vendor from Metchosin? I'm not saying it should or shouldn't be. I'm just curious if that's an issue of discussion amongst the Producers Association, or how that might pan out.
I can answer that question. Historically, we've had the fish and chip truck, and that was from a Metchosin resident. They've actually moved on, I think. They've closed their business here and they've opened it up in, I think, 70 Mile House. So the hope of the Producers Association is to always use local first and then go beyond that. Okay. Councillor Shukin.
I just wish to speak in support of renewing the lease, and I understand that the producers are looking to install a number of new stalls in the next little while, so that'll be neat to see what the impact is to the market over time, and which, of course, continues to grow in popularity. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, great. With seeing no further comment, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, thank you. Motion proceeds. Okay, moving on to the Metchosin Community Association operating agreement on page 45 of your council agenda. This is the Metchosin Community Association operating agreement renewal, and we have options here 1, 2, and 3. What say ye? What would you like to do? This is their operational agreement.
Councillor Donaldson had her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I would move that council approve the 4-year renewal.
Okay. Thank you. This is moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Councillor Shukin, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, only to support the great work that the Community Association has done over the years, and yeah, all in support of extending the lease agreement.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Donaldson, do you wish to speak?
No, I concur. They're quite the hub of activity. There's all sorts of different activities that go on there, whether it's church services or reunions, drop-in, arts, all sorts of a variety of things, knitting groups, that sort of stuff. It's a great gathering place for a lot of people to come and be part of it.
I did have a question of the minimum of 2.5 million in commercial general liability. I'm just wondering, that was the district must provide that. I was wondering if I could ask the interim CAO, CFO, if that should be increased to 5 million or 2.5 million is sufficient.
So that amount of $2.5 million is consistent with what we provided, including at least for the chosen firefighters society. So just made consistent.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments? Go ahead, Councillor Gray.
Thank you. I guess I would ask the same question. I'd lift that to $5 million. And it's a bit confusing, the contract, really. At 11B, the district is providing commercial general liability insurance, or at least funding it. Alcohol inclusive for normal operating events of the house. And then in the next clause, 12.2, the association is asked to get liability insurance when there's alcohol served for larger groups of people. So I'm not really sure those two clauses are consistent. I would have thought that we simply have the association get an alcohol license when they have events when alcohol is being served with $5 million liability and the district being co-insured.
Okay. Susan.
So the $2.5 million is just general liability and the additional, the 12.2 is for if there's any alcohol involved. So that means that's on the community association to get the insurance for any alcohol use.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
So should we strike the words in 11B, alcohol inclusive? The other question I had was 13. There's this indemnity going in both directions, and I'm not sure about that either, but I didn't have a chance to inquire before the meeting about that.
I think the alcohol inclusive should be in 11B. What do you think?
I think my preference would be to get that confirmed, because I think I do agree with Councillor Gray that there may seem to be contradiction, but let's just get that confirmed so that we make sure that everybody's protected.
Okay.
Where I'm at is you see more than 100 people is where we ask the association to get insurance, but what if there's like 75 people or 99 people? Then we carrying insurance for 2.5 seems inadequate to me. Anybody correcting or taking a look at that would be a big help. The other question I had was just about the roadway being included. As people have heard in the previous discussions about these leases on the municipal property, I'm disinclined to support lease including the roadway. But I recognize that's been the pattern of activity in the past. I know Councillor Shukin is planning to meet with other users, and perhaps that's a topic of discussion and we could proceed with this as is, but understand that that's something that may solve a problem somewhere else in the grounds and might then be common for all of the users in the end.
Okay. Councillor Shukin, did you want to comment?
You know what, I'm betting that one of the reasons why the parking lot is included is because of the garage sale and the use that event takes up for what ends up being like over a month, I would say. It's speculation on my part. I'm not hung up on this. Clearly the community, the community association knows it is sharing the parking lot and working with the community on the parking lot use.
Okay. Okay, so with that, I'm going to call the question that council approved the 4-year renewal, and noting that the staff will be looking at clause 12.1 in relation to 11B. for the insurance. Is that okay with you?
12.2
12.2.
and 11B.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor?
I'm in favor.
Great. None opposed. The motion carries. Okay. 8D. This is on page 55 of your agenda. This is an administrative policy for appreciation gifts for council. So it has been past practice for some, but not all, for the District of Metchosin to provide council members who are not returning to elected office with a gift equivalent of $50 per year for the service of the municipality. My feelings is that past practices does not make policy, and that's why this is why the staff is bringing this forward, so that we can formalize this, so there's no questions asked in the future, and nobody else is asked to sign past gifts that haven't gone through the appropriate approval process. Okay, so you've read this. We've got the options for council for consideration. The policy is on the back page. I think this was taken from the District Review Royal, if I'm correct, in terms of what they do. And I'm interested in hearing what council would like to do on this one. Would anybody like to speak to this? So we have the options of either approving the district policy A, the appreciation gifts, which is on page 56, or send it back to staff for further information, with justification, of course. Okay. What would you like to?
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So is it for 4 years, or is it consecutive years of like 20 years, or is it, if they're 8 years, what are we actually asking? Is it just one term? And
Yeah.
$50 for each year, so it's $200 for 4 years.
Yeah, I think it would be for consecutive service.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, they would have to spend at least one term in office, it looks like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
before this takes effect.
Mm-hmm. Anybody
So
else?
I guess my question is, if it's more than that, then is it going to be, if they're there for 2 terms, 8 years, it's $400, or is it just the fact they give service and they not do it by year, but do it by term?
No, it would be this, according to this policy, it would be by year. And so each term is a 4-year term now, and so it would be by year, according to the policy. Okay, so this is coming up in the public. Other communities are discussing severance packages and the likes. This is what has been done for some in the past. What would you like to do? Oh, sorry, Councillor Gray.
Yeah, I'm going to move a motion that council approve District of Metchosin policy number A-100.78, appreciation of gifts to council.
Okay, moved by
I would second that.
Moved by Councillor Gray, seconded by Councillor Shukin. Discussion. Go ahead.
And I had no idea such a policy existed, but apparently it's been in place for a very long time now. And what we're doing is confirming a policy that has been in existence, if not in paper otherwise, and we should formalize it so we know where money is being spent. As to the dollar amounts, I don't have a position on it. Simply, it's been the tradition and the practice, and it's some recognition for people who sit around the table for some considerable hours. And I guess that's why I'm moving the motion.
Yeah, with just a correction, this wasn't a policy. That's the point of all of this. It wasn't a policy. It was a past practice for some, but no, not all council members, and that's why we're formalizing it into this policy. Okay, anybody else wish to? Go ahead, Councillor Shukin.
I want to commend Councillor Gray's definition of a council, someone who sits around the table for a considerable number of hours.
Okay.
That's a joke.
Okay, good. Anybody else?
I don't, I think it's good to formalize a tradition into a policy and have no reason to disapprove of this, and yeah, good move.
Okay. Seeing no other comment, I'll call the question. All in favor?
I'm in favor.
Okay, that's unanimous. That motion carries. Okay, and then we have the correspondence, which we thank the authors of the letter writing in support of the Dupree Road variance permit. What else do we got? The correspondence, no bylaws, no other business. We have question period because it's before 9:30, so we have up to 30 minutes or 20 minutes maximum if anybody wants to ask any questions at this time before we adjourn. Go ahead. Can you come to the mic, Katie, so the people at home can hear you too?
Hi, it's Katie Nelson of 4596 William Head. And there was mention made by Mayor regarding flooding coming from Morley's Meadow into market stalls. I can only remember a few times when the road was actually flooded, but I don't recall them actually that flooding going into market stalls that were open at that time of year. So I just wondering if you could elaborate on that.
Yeah, so I can't remember the time, but I can, unfortunately, the representatives from the Producers Association have now gone, but there was significant drainage from, there's a pipe at the, what would that be, sort of the north corner that was blocked. And so there was overflow over the road into the far stalls at the farmer's market. And so that wasn't an issue of the Morley's Meadow. It was an issue of the that green space there. So it wasn't specifically.
Right, it was a maintenance issue. It
wasn't an issue of Morley's Meadow, it was a maintenance issue.
Oh, excellent. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay.
Leonore Davidson, 900 Speyside Lane. I just have one question because between the Finance Committee one and this one here, there was a question put out about actually taxes, and it was, none of us could answer it. I understand farm status people pay a higher rate of tax. Is that, do any of you know that?
Actually, I think it's the opposite. It's the opposite in that if you have ALC recognition of, and you have farm status, you pay lower taxes.
But I understand, like just like industrial, you pay a higher rate. That's the question. I should have made that clearer. A different rate for residential, industrial, farm status, and agricultural. And so that was a question we wondered, is farm status charged a different rate of tax?
Okay.
Just like industrial.
Yeah.
None of us could answer that.
I can't answer that either.
No. Is this something we'd be interested in knowing? I felt it couldn't be possible, but who knows? Okay, thank you.
We'll get some information soon for that in the future. Would you like to speak to that?
Yes, please.
Uh-huh.
So the rates are charged slightly different for classes. So municipalities do have the option of depending on what you class of properties you see as being important in your community. So for example, even though normally business are charged higher than residential, for mill rates, some communities do consider they don't charge businesses as high as others because they see that business do add a lot of value to the community. So same with farm classes, it's charged a different rate to residential, but whatever rate it is, it's up to council to decide. So that is the exercise that will be happening at the end of April or May.
Okay. Great. Do we have any other questions from the community? We'll find out some information for you.
So does that mean that you will look at it and decide what rate the farm status people will pay each year?
According to the mill rate, yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Gray, seconded by Councillor Shukin. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, great. Thank you for the great discussion, everybody. And thank you for turning out to this meeting, participants. Great. Great to see you.